So this is our follow-up review to this, the KTM 790 Adventure R. Did a video, I did a piece on it a couple of months ago, and I was off-roading it in Wales at their new Sweet Lamb complex. The last couple of weeks we've had the opportunity just to test it out here in the Lake District, which is just where the Knox HQ and factory is, and really get a handle on it, you know, outside of that environment, on the road, bit of off-road as well, and you know, what it's like to live with, I suppose. On road, I mean, in general, if you were to say, okay, look, we've ridden it on the road, what do you think of it?
It's a good question, and first of all, I've got to say, Aaron, it must have been a real hardship for you to disappear off to KTM's bespoke testing facility.
Well, it's tough at the top.
I can't say that I was at all jealous over that, not green in the slightest. Having said that, I guess we ought to take a minute just to appreciate where we are. We're always banging on about the Lake District, aren't we? But just look at this backdrop. You couldn't think of a more appropriate place to be testing a bike like this, could you? No. Having said that, in terms of my off-road experience, it's obviously pretty limited. We obviously went out to Spain last year and spent some time off-roading, and I think it's fair to say that I probably struggled the most. So I'm going to leave that kind of aspect of reviewing this bike to you. In terms of how I feel about this bike on the road, I think, and we've spoken at length, haven't we, in terms of, you know, what this bike is trying to achieve for its on the road type riding, and I think compromise is a word that's kind of been repeated quite often during the course of those conversations, and I'm not sure I wouldn't necessarily consider that to be a criticism, but I do think that trying to create that perfect balance between a bike that you ride off-road, and I mean really off-road properly. I mean, I don't just mean bouncing it up a curve. I mean, you know, the sort of thing that you were doing when you went to Wales a month ago or 6 weeks ago, and trying to marry that with a bike that's got really good on-road manners, I think is a very difficult thing to do, actually. But my lasting impression is it's very well mannered. My first impression when I saw the bike, sort of when I came to the factory and saw it sitting outside, was, my goodness, it's big. It was, you know, when we talked about it at the NEC last year, it just didn't give me that impression of size. I don't know what it is about when you see bikes collected together, but you know, it didn't feel as, its scale just didn't feel as great. And actually seeing it stand alone in a car park, it's a big bike. I was quite surprised by that. But what I found was, when I rode it and manoeuvred it around, and we've been doing a bit of that this morning, obviously we're taking a few photographs and doing some videoing, it's very easy. It feels very light at the front. I'm not intimidated by the bike at all, especially given that, you know, frankly, it really is on pretty much knobblies.
Yeah.
Handles in a way that is comforting. It's not, you know, it doesn't intimidate me at all. I mean, I think for me, and what's interesting, obviously we've got KTM's other 790 bike, the Duke, that we're testing. You know, at the centre of it all is that motor, that parallel twin. It really is a great piece of kit. You know, it makes strong power, it makes strong torque.
Oh, it's definitely a strong engine.
Yeah. So I've gone around the houses a bit there, haven't I? But I think you know, my first impressions are very easy, very comfortable, not intimidating, easy to manoeuvre, and surprising in some respects, given what I think is physically quite a large motorcycle. This, and we talked about this when we saw the bike for the first time at the NEC last year. This was created through customer demand. So KTM's customer base said, build us a middleweight, off-road, biased machine that we can tour on, but we can absolutely smash the dunes, the off-roading, the lanes, and you know, that's why this bike came to be. So
I think they've delivered on that.
Oh, absolutely,
and
without question.
Yeah. And if I was to sort of summarise what I think of it, I think if you were to take that brief, what you've just said about their customers saying, have they delivered on that? In my opinion, 100%. Big tick.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are my initial impressions, Aaron. So I guess you've got a really good idea of what it rides like off-road. What are your thoughts about its on-road manners?
First thing I'll say, I agree with you. When you come on to it, you know, it's a big horse.
It's a substantial bit of kit, isn't it?
It is, and I understand why. I mean, you know, this has got the longest travel suspension of any sort of, you know, bike in its class, 240mm, you know, front and back. So, you know, you can't have that level of suspension and have a low bike. And I'm sorry, you know, the two things are just not sort of compatible with one another. So you have sort of got to get your head around that. There are a few, you know, tricks here and there. I mean, you know, trying to sort of swing your leg over it like you would possibly a regular road motorbike is a bit of an issue unless you're superbly flexible.
Or your inside leg is like 40.
yeah, basically. But, you know, I picked up from one of the instructors, you know, how they were getting on. It was that, you know, putting their foot on, and I'll put a clip in showing you how you do this. But
it's a common misconception, isn't it, with side stands? But actually, they can, I mean, it's a 200+ kilo bike. It can easily take your weight as well. You just step on the peg and off you go. But
and it's a really robust motorcycle, you know, and actually. I have dropped it, you know. I dropped it off a curb just outside my house because, you know, you're a bit off camber, blah blah blah, and you know, because it is quite tall, and you know, and I know it's lighter weight in its class, it's still relatively heavy actually. And
I think it's I think it's worth mentioning that it is. You know, in terms of its seat height, it is tall. I'm sure we'll make reference, and it'll come up in the details in terms of the actual seat height. There is a lowering option with this bike, isn't there? But
was a lowering seat?
Yes, a lowering seat.
It drops it 10 mil though.
Is that all?
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, what they have done, which is similar to a lot of your kind of your motocross, your off-road bikes, is the seat is quite narrow. But even so, I mean, I guess I would say that I'm a pretty average height guy with a fairly average inside leg length, and when I'm standing the bike up completely straight, I'm on tiptoes. So I can understand why it would be easy, and generally, to be honest, it's normally me who drops bikes, which is... Anyway, that being said...
The good news is, it's like a ridiculously tough motorbike. So I did crunch it, and I thought, I'm in trouble here. And actually, all I've done is done a little bit of damage on the handguard. Yeah. Well, of course, the other side of it being tall, and I hadn't quite appreciated this, but when you do get out on the road, you know, it's like you're in a Range Rover if you've ever sort of driven in one of those. Yeah. You know, you have got a command of the road. You can see everything. Or you feel like everyone can see you. You're big, you're bold.
Yeah.
And you know, this.
Well, no,
I can understand why people sort of get into this type of motorcycling, because you have got some sort of like prowess on the road.
Well,
you know?
And of course, the other advantage of a bike like this is you can stand on the pegs.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was interesting, we're doing some tracking shots, and I'm following the car riding the bike, and I'll stand on the pegs. Your view is just incredible. You know, you're really high up. You can see over the hedgerows. You can see what's coming. You know what's going on around you. It's perfect for that. One of the interesting things that you note with these pegs as well, of course, if you sat on the bike, they're rubber. Yeah. But actually, when you stand on the bike, all the surround is made out of aluminium. So you've got that fantastic grip, which is absolutely perfect when you're doing off-road riding.
Totally.
That's my note for how to off-road.
Very good. The other thing about the on-road capabilities, I think it's, you know, we've talked about the engine. It's fast. We're going to put the specs up in the screen. It got 95 horsepower, 88 newton meters of torque, I think.
87 or 88, yeah.
Around that sort of torque band. It's all usable power.
And it's low down as well, isn't it? That's the other thing.
Yeah.
It's usable, like you say, it's totally usable. It's not, you know, rev, it's absolute, once it's off, it's from 3,000 on up to 7,000, 8,000, it really does pull and pull strong.
The quick shifter works really well, actually.
I'm a massive fan.
Yeah, I love that quick shifter.
I'll be honest, it's up and down the gearbox as well, which is worth mentioning. Some quick shifters don't do that. They go up the box, they won't go back down. It works really well. For me, it really enhances the riding experience on any bike, frankly, but on something with a load of torque like this, all you got to do is open the throttle, leave it constant, and just bang through the gears, and I mean, it just floats along really nicely.
On the type of roads that we've been riding today, in the Lake District, believe it or not, it's actually a really quick bike to ride, you know, and a nice bike to enjoy this type of road. I mean, you know, riding these roads on my bike, it's just hard work, to be honest. It's too hard. The bike's too quick. You can't sort of like get into a rhythm of it. But this, you know, you do feel like you're just galloping over it all. It, you know, soaks up all the lumps and bumps. While it's got massive suspension, it's not like a pogo stick. You know, it's actually it's pretty.
Yeah, its bounce and rebound is pretty strong. It's pretty solid. And I think the other thing we haven't mentioned is the riding position. And I think obviously that is part of having this raised ride height and you having a more commanding position on the bike, but that also lends itself to you feeling like you've got a really high degree of control over the motorcycle. We've done a lot of switchbacks today, a lot of crests, a lot of hills, a lot of, you know, tighter turns, you know, at no point have I felt uncomfortable on the motorcycle. I felt like I really had a good grip of control of what's going on underneath me, and that is quite confidence inspiring. The other thing worth mentioning is the display is very clear.
Oh yeah.
The only slight drawbacks that I've noticed is obviously when we came out and road tested the bike this morning, we filled it with fuel. I've got to be honest, the gauge doesn't fill me with a great deal of confidence. It just doesn't seem to know whether it's got any fuel in it or it's got a full tank or otherwise. Sometimes it's telling me the range is 100 and then it's 150. It seems a little bit unsure of exactly how much fuel is splashing around it. And the other one thing I would talk about is the screen. And I know you had a little bit of a bugbear with that too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean the screen, if you're using this genuinely on the road, you would 100% you would need to fix the screen. It's terrible. Did
you say that there was an upgrade that you can buy?
Yeah, you can buy. So you can fix it. It's 80 quid. You need the touring screen. You just buy the touring screen. It's fitted to the 790 Adventure. Yeah, 80 quid, and that should fix it. But this particular screen, I understand it from an off-roading point of view. Actually, you'd be better off, honestly, just taking it off, because what you find is the wind, as soon as you get to about 60 miles an hour, just fires it directly at either your chin in the lowest position or right in the middle of your nose in the other position, and you sort of feel like you're being transported into the quantum realm or something.
Yeah, somebody's at warp speed.
Yeah,
it's turbulent air as well. I think that's the other thing. Sometimes, you know, you have to accept it, like with a naked bike, and you have to accept that if you've got no protection there, you are going to get quite a lot of wind blast. But it's how that wind hits you as well.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And I think, and I'm kind of nitpicking in fairness, because I think we're pretty much on the same page in terms of our overall impressions of the bike. But the other thing is the non-adjustability, having to take an Allen key and undo, and that to me, I mean, I wasn't aware of that when I first read the bike, and I'm sort of grabbing this, trying to pull it up a bit more, and it just won't do it, will it? So that's the one thing, and the fuel gauge. But aside from that, in terms of my overall impression of on the road, it's a very competent motorcycle, isn't it? There's no doubt about it, and quite rightly you said that it's robust. You do get that feeling with the bike that it does feel very hard to break it.
Oh yeah.
And it's been put through its paces, hasn't it? I mean, I can't say that that's necessarily what I've been doing, but back and forth, up and down, it does exactly what you ask it to do every single time.
I mean, one of the amazing things about it is and it's quite strange this, but you can be riding really nicely on the road and, sort of 70, 80, 90, whatever mile an hour you're doing, and then literally, like what I did the other night, turned up at this motocross track and then bombed it around a motocross track, and with absolute confidence. And I suppose that's quite unique, really. I mean,
that's where the bike like this comes into its own, isn't it? And having something with that kind of dual capability.
Yeah.
As I say, I think it would be remiss of us not to be making the sort of clear indication that there are some compromises, and particularly if you're going to run the bike on a Metzler Karoo like this is on, you're never going to get that outright point-to-point performance that you might get off a more road-biased motorcycle. But
it cuts off the contact patch, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But like you say, you can ride it to somewhere like you did the other night in Wallop. You're on the track and you're off-road and you're on loose surfaces and you're jumping it and you're bouncing it, and it does exactly what you want it to. So we thought while we were out here, we'd take the opportunity just to talk very briefly about the gear that we're wearing today. Well, the gear that I'm wearing, because I've done most of the riding today, and I've had the opportunity to use for the first time our new Urbane Pro shirt. I mean, it's exactly what I expected. It's fantastic. It really, truly is fantastic. I know we've had a hugely successful year with this product already, and it's so nice for me to get the opportunity to go out there and use it in the real world. So, it's our brand new product, CE approved to level A. It incorporates both your impact protection and your abrasion resistance into one shirt, but you can wear it with a layer on top. So I've had our Hayden denim jacket on top when it was a bit cooler early this morning, or you can wear it just like this on its own, and it gives you all the protection that you need. So in addition, I've also been wearing our brand new Richmond Mark II. So basically I'm a guinea pig today. I've been wearing all the new gear. Richmond Mark II. So obviously these supersede our original Richmonds. They are now fully Kevlar lined. They also come with a microlock armour for both the knee and for the hip. They're Cool Max stitched as well to keep the temperature down, and they've also got a little bit of a stretch sewn into them, a 2% elastine, which just gives them a really nice amount of flexibility when you're on the bike, just that extra stretch, and particularly trying to swing your leg over a bike a KTM, it does make a difference, you know. And
I think you could do the splits in them too.
well, don't ask me to do that, Aaron, please. All I can tell you is they're comfortable and they work, and of course they protect you.
Yeah.
And that's the foundation, really.
Yeah. Well, this new Richmond Mark II is actually just received AA CE rating as well. So this is a genuinely really safe gene to ride on a bike.
100%.
And you know, for years I've been wearing the original Richmonds, and I thought they were great. Having said that, putting these on for the first time, it's a total different game. I mean, these are so comfortable. They're so just like regular jeans, really. Absolutely fantastic. I've been really impressed with them.
Well,
these will be my jean of choice going forward.
Without a shadow of it. I mean, you get the best of both worlds, don't you? You get a jean that looks like a jean, that is sewn like a jean, but it feels like a jean to hand, but is incredibly comfortable. You know, the foundation of what we're doing here is offering you something that protects you incredibly well, but it's going to work when you ride your motorbike. And that's exactly what they do. I can only speak from my experience this morning, but so far so good. They really are doing the job. Fantastic.
Look, so all the links for the products that we've been wearing is in the description. So if you want to check that out, go and have a look there. So Mark, we should probably talk about the electronics on this bike. It's a massive feature, all these new KTMs, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Obviously it comes up on this beautiful TFT 5-inch display, and I think that's really premium, and I think it's really, you know, smart.
I think it's probably fair to say it probably should be there. I mean, I guess we're going to touch on pricing on this bike, and it's quite an interesting area given, you know, what Yamaha are about to, well, what they've just released with their Tenere 700. But yeah, I mean, in terms of how much they've thrown at the bike, electronics wise, it's pretty impressive, right?
Oh yeah.
So you've got switchable ABS, switchable traction, 4 rider modes.
But yeah, so you got street, you've got rain, you've got off-road, and then you've got rally mode as well. And obviously all of the all of that changes the throttle response, it changes the traction control.
Yeah.
And then actually within each of those settings you can then play around with the amount of traction control interference that you would have. So say you want to put it in rally mode, which is the most aggressive, you can then, you know, knock it back to 8 or whatever, which gives you quite a bit of interference.
So you can really tailor the bike to your own.
and you know what, that I found that absolutely fantastic. Say for example you are out in the middle of nowhere, right, and you're not that confident and you're on your own.
Yes.
The last thing you want to do is drop it on an off-camber thing, because you know you're gonna have to pick it up. And so you do, you know, or if you're beginning, for example, and you're coming out of a corner off-road, you don't want to spin it up. That is amazing. You can literally just hold the throttle open and it'll just...
It enables you to create the safety net that works for you, right?
Yes, totally.
So that, I mean,
really
that is
personalise
it. I mean, not only that, but you've also got a Bluetooth functionality on this. I think, if I'm right, you can pair some sort of sat-nav system to it. I think through KTM's online assistance. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I know that there's some functionality there as well. So it does give you a full suite of electronics, doesn't it? I know we were just talking off camera, but your preference might be to add a bit of cruise control and maybe some heated grips. I think I would be inclined to agree. If you looked at certain competitors, I'm not going to say it, Aaron, but you know what I'm talking about. You know, it's standard. You know, it's standard, and the price points are competitive. You know, you do get used to having those things on certain bikes, and I think, again, whilst I would agree that it would be a nice feature to have a standard, I do also understand why it probably doesn't feature on a bike like this, because it is, to my mind, more off-road bias than it is road bias. But if you are going to do what it says on the tin, it's an interesting one, isn't it?
I mean, look, if I owned this bike, I know I would probably put more miles on the road than I do in my current setup. Because what I would do firstly is I would change the screen, I'd get a nice big screen, I'd keep the heated grips that have been fitted to it, and you know, it's a bit of a winter hack. It's do it all, you know, in all weathers, so on and so forth. And I just think, cruise control would just kind of complement that, especially if you're going to smash out a load of motorway
Well, I mean, I can tell you from my own experience riding similar. And I can only draw on my own experience of what bikes I've ridden that are similar to this. You know, having cruise, if you're going to go off and do a monster day of, you know, 500 miles plus, it's invaluable. Something we haven't talked about as well, styling. Styling.
Well, do you know what? When I first saw this at the show, I'm like, I'm not a big fan of the way that adventure bikes look. I'm just not, just generally speaking. Having said that, I have to say this Adventure R has really grown on me. I actually really love the styling of it. Maybe not from every single angle.
No.
I think at the front it's quite tall and you know, whatever. But from every other angle, I love it, and I love the front mud guard. I'd actually be really pleased about the look of this. I genuinely would.
I like where KTM go with their styling. You know, it's very, very obvious without the, you know, mentioning colours, the lineage of the sort of range of bikes to do that. You can see they're all part of the same family. I like that kind of sharp nose. I like the styling of the lights, and it's no different with this. I think for me, because of what this does, there's a kind of undertone of functionality about it, if you know what I mean. I don't think, I'm not going to call it a beauty queen. Let's put it that way. I don't dislike it, but actually, and again, we were having a conversation about this. My preference is the look of the road bias, like the standard Adventure.
See, I would totally disagree with you on that. Mine would be totally the other way. Yeah. For me, the road going version.
But it's very subjective, isn't it? At the end of the day, you know, there are certain bikes that I know I like the look of and you think are hideous, you know. So well, you know, it's horses for courses. I guess all we can do is give our opinion. Yeah. But I don't dislike the look of the bike, and I do understand why it looks this way, and I think it works. Right,
braking performance, off-road, absolutely no problems. Obviously, the ABS is kicking in all the time, so you don't need it to be any more powerful, basically. Right. On-road, it's been a little bit of a different experience, I think. I mean, if I'm totally honest, and I'm probably nitpicking here, I'd want just that touch more power. You know, someone pulled out on me just before on, I was probably recording on the GoPro actually, and I just felt it could just need just a touch more power. Yeah. Would you agree? Or?
I would be inclined to agree. I had a kind of similar experience when I rode the bike earlier this morning, and I think a tractor came out and the traffic was backing up, and I had to grab a kind of fistful, and I just felt it could have given me just a touch more bite. But again, you know, there's a caveat to that, isn't it? You know, it's not a performance bike. Yeah. You know, I do think it's ample, but just in those, you know,
desperate moments,
in the odd situation where you might think, oh, I need to grab a little bit more. I wasn't overwhelmed with its braking performance, but I think, as I say, for general day-to-day use, it's going to tick the box and do the job. Yeah.
It's fair to say that the mid-weight adventure market is pretty fierce at the moment. Mark, would you agree with that?
Well,
it's becoming more fierce.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've had countless conversations about this, haven't we, in the recent past? And I think one of the points that that we were going over is actually it's a very interesting area, sort of middleweight adventure. You know, I mean, let's be honest, adventure biking has been dominated by BMW. In truth, you know.
Well, the figures back that.
The figures don't lie, do they? You know, GS and GS Adventure are the top two best-selling bikes and have been for year after year. Yeah. And then, of course, underneath that, they've also got F850 GS and they've got F750 GS, which are relatively new bikes, have just replaced their predecessors. And I think probably across that range from BMW, the 850 is this bike's closest competitor.
Would agree. Yeah.
But actually, I think what separates something like this KTM, as you would also probably suggest with Yamaha's new 700 Tenere, is they are more heavily biased in terms of their off-road ability. I think, again, you know, I wouldn't say anything disparaging about what BMW's bikes can do off-road, and they are very capable, but I do think this is almost creating a new segment in that market, along with the Tenere, that new 700, which has been, you know, again, we've spoken about previously, which has been a long time in the making. They're almost separate from the other bikes because they are so capable off-road, and are significantly more weighted in terms of how they perform off-road as opposed to how they perform on-road. Whereas the other bikes in that marketplace, I think, are more biased to on-road riding.
850 GS, Mark, we're actually hoping to get one of those over the next couple of months. I'll reserve judgment on that one until we actually get to ride it and do a bit of off-roading as well on it. But
yeah, I mean,
I agree with what you're saying in principle.
I've not ridden it. I think the reviews as a whole have been pretty positive on that bike. Obviously, I've ridden and owned a 1200. I know how good a bike that is on road. I couldn't tell you how good it is off road, but I think yes, it'll be interesting to draw a comparison between this and the 850. I think the most direct competitor with this bike is the Yamaha 700 and the Tenere, and the reviews that I've seen, it's had a hugely positive response from most people who've ridden it and published online. That I think would be quite interesting. But again, price point wise, they are worlds apart. Frankly, you're talking about. I think on the road the Tenere is just over £8,500. This is a £12,000 motorcycle. But in terms of concept,
it's a big difference, isn't it?
Huge difference.
Now, I would look at that Tenere 700 and think it looks like a great off-road bike. I think that there is quite, you are getting way more with this bike. You're getting more power.
Yes.
You're getting another 25 horsepower. You're getting more rider modes. You're getting more and probably better electronics.
I mean,
you're getting more suspension. I think this is going to ride better and off-road probably. Obviously not having not ridden them both, but I think in terms of the on-road, they're both big bikes. I'd want 95 horsepower.
I get. I mean, you say you reserve judgment on the BMW. I would reserve judgment on the Tenere until I had the chance to ride it. It's difficult to say that this bike has an absolutely direct competitor, but I think in concept, it's more similar to the 700 Tenere than it is any other bike currently on sale.
Sure.
But you're right. In terms of the suite of electronics, the hardware that comes on this bike, that would explain why it is more expensive. And I think it will perform better off-road, and it will perform better off-road, but again, at a price, I think the Tenere makes a really strong argument too.
100%, and that's why people are so excited about it.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
So I think they're both, they're both going to be we're bikes. It's just I would view this as a more premium.
Oh, absolutely, without question. And again, we've obviously talked to the guys at KTM, and the market has responded, and they're basically sold out of these, aren't they, in the UK? Yeah. I mean, that kind of speaks volumes, doesn't it, for its appeal, for the marketplace that it sits in. It's clearly an incredibly popular bike, and now we know why. What this bike does do is offer you, we keep using the same word, compromise, but a nice balance between something that is genuinely capable off-road. And again, I know we've referenced this. You can look at Aaron's review in his previous video, but something that you can actually sit on the road and ride for a good period of time. If you wanted to go touring, I know we've talked about this as well. You're going to the south of Spain, you're going to do a bit of off-roading when you get there. Is there a better bike in the market that is going to be as capable as this? I don't think there is, not right now.
So that's been our review of the KTM 790 Adventure R. I'm a real fan.
I've got to agree. It's a pretty good bike, isn't it? There's no doubts.
Yeah, it is. So look, hope you've enjoyed that one. Please like, please comment, please subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more videos like this, and hit your notification bell as well so you get notified when we do upload something. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.